This is Unit 10, Lesson C. We're talking about raising a power to a power. So what happens when you have an exponent that also has an exponent? After this lesson, you should be able to evaluate exponents of exponential terms. We're going to take a look at the difference between what we did in Lesson A, where it was x squared times x to the third. Now that's going to be compared to what we're doing today, which is x squared to the third power. Here, this is saying I have x times x, 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 x. Well, when I put that together, I have x to the fifth power, which is why we know we can just add those exponents to get the answer. The new stuff is where I have x squared to the third power, which means I actually have x squared times itself 3 times. Well, if I write that out, x, 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 I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that gives me x to the 6th power. So in the end, whenever you have a power to a power, you multiply the powers. 2 times 3 gives you x to the 6th power. So we're going to take a look when raising a term with an exponent to the power of another exponent, multiply the exponents together. We like to remember this by saying, pow, pow, multiply now. Pow, pow, multiply now. So whenever you have a power to a power, you multiply. We're going to take a look at example 1. It's x to the 6th to the third power, which means I multiply to get x to the 18th. Pause video now as you try example 2. Press play to go over your answer. Hopefully you got x to the 45th power. And again, that's because we multiplied them. We're going to take a look at example 3. Here, what happens is I'm still going to multiply my exponents, but I have to do it to each term inside the parentheses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in all of the powers that we didn't know were already there. 2 is actually to the first power. X to the 6th, y to the first power as well. So what I'm going to do is take that 3 and multiply it by each of my exponents. That gives me 2 to the third power, x to the 18th power, and y to the third power. Now the extra last step is 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So my final answer is 8 x to the 18th, y to the third. So again, when you have a power to a power, you multiply the exponents. But we have to remember that numbers, the coefficients, have a power of 1. So when I use that exponent, I also have to evaluate that number to the exponent. Pause video now to try example 4. Press play to go over your answer. So again, I fill in any missing exponents. I'm going to go ahead and multiply all of those by 2. That gives me negative 4 to the second power, x to the negative 6th, y to the positive 6th. I'm then going to shove my negative exponents. We already remembered to do that. Negative 4 to the second power, y to the 6th power, over x to the positive 6th power. Notice I didn't shove the negative 4. I have to evaluate negative 4 squared, which means negative 4 times negative 4. Well, a negative and a negative make a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. So I get 16 y to the 6th over x to the 6th. Final answer. Pause the video now as you try this clicker question. Press play to go over your answer. Power 1 times by 2 times 2 times 2 because of this 2. I get negative 3 squared, x to the negative 10th, y to the 12th. I know I have to shove my negative down to the bottom. Negative 3 squared, y to the 12th, over x to the 10th. Negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3. Negative times a negative makes a positive. 3 times 3 makes 9. So we're looking for 9y to the 12th over x to the 10th. and that is going to be letter C. A is wrong because it has a negative. Remember, whenever you multiply a negative times a negative, it's going to give you a positive. All right, we're going to take a look at example 5. The only difference here, you'll notice we have a negative exponents, but the steps are still the same. This is a power of 1 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Now I'm going to end up with negative 6 to the negative 3rd power, x to the negative 18th power, and y to the positive 6th power. And again, that's what I got from multiplying positive 1 times negative 3, positive 6 times negative 3, and negative 2 times negative 3. Now I'm going to shove my negative exponents. Well, look here, it's also a negative exponent. So those get the good old shove down. So we have y to the 6th over negative 6 to the positive 3rd power, x to the positive 18th power. My last step is to evaluate my coefficient. That means negative 6 times itself 3 times. Negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. Times negative 6 is going to give me negative 216. We should remember that from our cubes. And of course, everything else fills in. So there you have it. We have our what happens when you have a negative power that you're raising your exponents to. Pause the video now to try example 6. Press play to go over your answer. So I make this a power of 1, multiply them all by a negative 4. That gives me 2 to the negative 4, x to the positive 28, y to the negative 20. Now that we're here, we're going to go ahead and take the negative exponents. This one's negative, and shove them to the bottom. That gives me x to the 28 over 2 to the negative, now it's positive, 4th, y to the positive 20. That's why we shove them, to make them positive. Now we evaluate our coefficient, which is 2 to the 4th, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 16. X to the 28th over 16, y to the 20th. And there you have it, is our final answer. Pause the video now as you try this clicker question. Press play to go over your answer. We should have gotten the answer of C. And that's, of course, because if I did this times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, I would have ended up with 5 to the negative 2, x to the 8th, y to the negative 6. So the only one that's positive is x to the 8th, which is why it's on top. The other two got shoved to the bottom, which is why they're on the bottom. And 5 squared is 25. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a look at example 7. Example 7 has me with a power on the outside, but I have a fraction on the inside. So you have two options. You can simplify and then do the power, or I just like to do the power first. Times 2, times 2, times 2. This is a 1 times 2. When I rewrite it, I have x to the 10th, y to the 18th, x to the 20th, and y to the 2nd. Now I'm going to go ahead and simplify by subtracting because we're dividing. 10 minus 20, and then we have 18 minus 2. That gives us x to the negative 10th and y to the 16th. Our last step is to go ahead and shove our negative exponents. So our final answer is y to the 16th over x to the 10th. Final answer. Pause the video now to try example 8. Press play to go over your answer. So if I multiply all these by 3, I get x to the 6th, y to the 60th, x to the 15th, y to the 9th. Now I simplify. 6 minus 15, 60 minus 9. I end up with x to the negative 9 power y to the 51st power. My last step is to shove my negative exponents. Y to the 51st power stays on top. X to the 9th is now on the bottom. Final answer. We're going to take a look at example 9. You'll notice the difference is that it has a negative exponent. So what I'm actually going to do is flip my fraction. So I'm going to write what's on bottom on top, and I'm going to write what's on top on bottom. What that does is I now can say it's to the positive 3rd power. So again, I flipped it in order to make it a positive exponent. So now I just multiply all of those by positive 3. I get x to the 15th, y to the 9th, over x to the 6th, y to the 6th. I go ahead and subtract the bottom exponents on both of them, and my final answer is x to the 9th, y to the 3rd, both on top. Pause video now as you try example 10. Press play to go over your answer. I see a negative, so I think flip. That gives me y on top and x, y to the 5th on bottom. It's now to the positive 4th power. These have powers of 1, times them by 4. That gives me y to the 4th over x to the 4th, y to the 20th. My last step is to go ahead and subtract y to the 4th minus 20. That's what's on bottom. You get y to the negative 16th over x to the 4th. So we go ahead and shove that negative. Now keep in mind, when we shove that negative, it leaves a 1 on top. So your final answer is 1 over x to the 4th, y to the 16th. Don't forget, when you shove it to the bottom, you got to put a 1 on top. And this brings us to the end of our video. If you have any questions, raise your hand and ask. Thank you for watching.